Howler's Pharmacy is here to help you find exactly what you need. They have been in our community for decades. Check them out on the corner of Fremont and Peralta in downtown Centerville. Give Jennifer Petroselli a call. Jennifer helps her clients make smart real estate decisions that benefit them in the long run. Contact Petroselli Homes on Niles Boulevard. If you have enjoyed this podcast, consider supporting it with a small gift at buymeacoffee.com/the Fremont Podcast. Thank you for your support and thanks for listening.
Coming to you straight from Fremont, California, this is the Fremont Podcast, dedicated to telling the stories of the past and present of the people and places of the city of Fremont, one conversation at a time.
I used to know your name, but
Oh,
my wife tells me that I don't know your name anymore. Can you tell me who you are and where you work and what your job title is?
Yes, I used to be Stephanie Gertsch, and now I'm Stephanie Uchida.
Hey, congratulations.
Yes, as of September 28th.
Nice.
So not that long ago.
That's awesome. And where do you work and what do you do?
Yes, I still work at Tri-City Voice. I'm the assignment editor, so I edit things that people send in. I wrangle the freelancers. I assign them to different things and help them troubleshoot when they run into issues. And I occasionally write stories for the paper myself as well.
Correct me where I'm wrong, but I think the Tri-City Voice gets its news stories from two main places. One, things that people send in. Hey, this thing is about to happen. Maybe you'd want to cover it. And then also things that you go out hunting for. How do you go out and hunt for a story?
It's changed recently because we were just taken over by weeklies, or we joined weeklies, like a happy transition. And I had a lot of resources because originally Bill and Sharon's vision for the paper was that it would be about local events like arts and entertainment, local theater, local festivals, art galleries, and things like that. And those are somewhat regular, and we kind of know when people are having their big shows, like big festivals and events and things like that. So I had like all of that data to keep checking on regularly, and that was a big help. But now for weeklies, we're moving a little bit more towards local government stuff and things like that. So we're like a little bit more paying attention to what's coming up at city council meetings, for example, and other meetings like the ones for the Russell City reparations project and things like that.
And for anyone who doesn't know, what's the coverage area of the Tri-City Voice? I know it's quite large, but for people who don't read the paper regularly and don't look at the banner, what cities do you guys cover?
For weeklies, we are going to focus more on the the Fremont, Newark, Union City of it all, but we're still covering events from Hayward and San Leandro, occasionally Oakland, especially with Oakland Zoo and Chabot Space and Science Center, and also a little bit from Milpitas, and the unincorporated areas too, like Castro Valley.
Anything like, you said Castro Valley, but also like Cherryland and Ashland and San Lorenzo.
Yeah, San Lorenzo. Yeah, those are they're really close to Hayward too, so like there's a lot of overlap.
Tell me about like the most surprising story that you've worked on like in the last year that you worked on directly, because you mentioned at the top that your job mainly entails wrangling other people, but that you also report on occasionally. Tell me about something in the last 1 or 2 years where you were really surprised by it that you worked on directly.
I don't know if it's surprising, but one of the most enjoyable stories that I did was on this owl sculpture that students at Ohlone worked really hard on all semester, and then the day after it went up, someone smashed it.
Oh.
And just completely destroyed it. It was like a couple of years ago, like right after the spring semester ended.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, it was really sad, and it's such a small story, but talking to the people who worked so hard on this and learning how they did it, and then learning how they felt about it being destroyed. And then I got to do a follow-up 6 months later when they made a new owl and they resurrected their sculpture, and it's still there. And I still go by it every time I'm at Ohlone for something.
Whereabouts on campus is it?
It's right outside the art building.
Okay, cool. Good or bad, what was your favorite story of 2024?
2024. I had a lot of good stories. I liked working on the one about vaccines for the fall because I also had a lot of questions, so I could just ask all of my questions and say it was for my job.
Yeah, isn't that the best part of this?
Yes.
It's just you don't have to turn that filter on.
You just I have to be professional.
You have to be professional, but you can just I want to know, and therefore I can ask.
Yes, I can actually go and contact Washington Hospital and say, can I please talk with the infectious disease expert? Because all this about the flu and the new COVID shots, the different types of COVID shots and the bird flu is really confusing me. Can she just sit down with me for 30 minutes and tell me everything?
And then they're like, yes.
They're like, yes, we can arrange that.
That's great.
We'd love to be in the paper.
Full disclosure, they are a huge sponsor.
Yes.
of your paper.
Yeah, they've been with us for a long time.
And if they would like to sponsor a local podcast, what story were you unable to tell that you wish you could? And I realized that you were unable to tell it, and therefore you are probably not able to tell me. But if there's any way to skirt around the edges of it, to talk in code, to give just a kind of bullet point summary without getting into the details, if there's any way to tell that it existed, but also admit there weren't enough sources, or there wasn't enough time, or whether, et cetera, I would love to know, is there a story that you couldn't tell?
Yeah, there was one I worked on, but I felt like I just didn't, it was very complicated with a lot of details. I just didn't have the time to quite put it all together in a way that would make sense for the paper. I was talking with Liz Ames of BART, and it was about Quarry Lakes Parkway and whether this is a good thing for Union City or if it's going to just make Union City into a commuter town or a bedroom town.
For people who don't know, what is the Quarry Lakes Parkway?
It's a project to sort of oomph up the road that runs just north of Quarry Lakes Park. And they actually, there was a little farm there, and they kind of had to get rid of that. Put some development there and build the road there. They're still building it, but it's also kind of ends in a weird place. It goes through the city and then it just ends at the hills. And there isn't a good highway through the hills. It's 84 and that's kind of windy. So, this theory, that we were working towards was that this is making way for more development in the hills.
What got in the way of the story? Not in the way of the development, but what got in the way of you reporting on that?
Well, it was a long interview, so I was kind of putting together the different things, and there's a lot of facets to such a big project as well, so just trying to get all those little details correct, and also kind of fact-checking what Liz Ames was telling me, and going back through some documents she gave me about city council meetings, and these are they have 60 pages in these reports, and it's so complicated, and the projects have such hard to understand names as well, so it just felt overwhelming.
Shy of having a research staff.
Yes.
Dedicated research staff, a single reporter having to completely become an expert, essentially.
Yes,
because it's a
Union
report.
City's financials over the last 20 years.
Yeah, written literally by experts whose job it is to write such documents, of which you are not.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to ask, because you and I, when I tried to do a podcast for the Tri-City Voice, I wanted to work with the reporters. And that never really took off. Understandably, they are busy doing their own jobs, and I was the new guy. But you were kind enough to give me the recordings that you were doing for a different story. And those were lovely because, I mean, the sound quality was that of a phone, which is fine.
It's very slice of life.
but it was great to hear. So I just wanted to ask, like, on a personal level, all reporters have like different ways of going out and reporting and collecting. What is your method when you go out, when you're not at the editor desk? When you go out, what is your method of reporting?
I mean, sometimes I get a lot of ideas just by going through our Instagram, because I can sort of visit like, oh, I wonder what they're doing over here. Like, oh, like they have a video of this new thing they're working on. That's really cool. I'm going to reach out to them.
And so a lot of your reporting happens from the desk. Mm-hmm. And when you go out to report on something, the story I was mentioning before, you were at the Castro Valley, either the waste, it was during COVID, and they were talking about toilet paper.
Oh, yeah. That's one of my favorite titles.
Yeah. Like, what's your gear? What's your method of collecting? Like, is it recording everything and listening to it later? Is it bringing a notepad? Is it both? Is it some third thing? Is it some fourth thing?
I usually just record on my phone. Like, if I'm going out to somewhere and it's just I'm meeting up with these people, they're telling me what they're working on, then I just like to have my phone out recording, because I feel like I can stay in the moment and I'm not focusing on jotting little things down. And because I think it's really hard to divide your attention that way. So this is me just recording on my phone like I do when I'm talking to people for work.
Okay, I will do the same. Thank you for playing along. As the assignment editor, you mentioned that the majority of your job is wrangling the freelancers. What is one of your favorite things about working with a pool of reporters?
One of the best things about working with reporters is just seeing what they come up with, even when it's something that I've found and assigned out to them. Just seeing it come in and then noticing, oh, you had a really nice conversation, or wow, I didn't know that. Like, I'm really glad that this information is getting out there, and seeing their creativity that way. And it's even better when it's a story that they've pitched to me and it's already their passion, and they go out and they take initiative and they pursue it, and then I kind of get to help them get it out there to people. And it's nice to be part of it.
And tell me one negative thing about working with all of us.
The hardest thing about working with freelancers is that I call it wrangling of cats, but a more negative way to put it is that I feel like the mom because I'm not really their boss and they have other stuff going on, and I need to be respectful of that. But then it also is a lot of kind of gently nudging people to do the things they're supposed to do without coming off as a nag and kind of trying to hit that balance of, okay, I am in charge of this. I have to make sure it runs smoothly. I have to maintain boundaries and standards, but also you're adults and I'm not going to tell you guys what to do and lay down the law, because that's a bit too authoritarian.
Please consider donating $1 a month on a reoccurring basis to help this podcast that you enjoy. buymeacoffee.com/the-Fremont-podcast/membership. Do people like being asked questions?
I think so. I think if you first ask them if they're open to being asked questions, that kind of narrows the field a little bit to people who actually do have time to talk and want to share about whatever they're doing. But I think, everyone likes being asked questions about their passions, what they're really interested in and proud of. So I'm a very nice reporter. I don't try to do confrontation or gotcha questions. I just kind of try to make people feel comfortable and convey that I'm actually interested in what they have to say. So, yeah, I don't know who doesn't like that.
Yeah. What got you into the job?
I graduated from San Jose State with a master's in mass communications, and I was doing a tutoring job that was just part-time. I was looking for something else, and my parents found an ad in Tri-City Voice because they read it, and they were like, hey, Steph, you should apply for this. So I applied first as a freelancer writer and reporter, and they happened to be looking for someone to do editing a couple hours a week. So I eventually started doing that as well, and then coincidentally, their previous assignment editor left for another opportunity. So they said, you're already here? Do you want to be assignment editor? Do you want to be the new her? And I was like, okay.
How long ago was that? How long have you worked for the Tri-City Voice?
Since 2019.
What happens to a place, let's say Fremont, that's the name of this podcast, but what happens to a place when there starts to become sort of a coverage desert? Not really, but like the concept of a food desert. But like when all the media outlets are far away, and you do have some, and we have the Tri-City Voice, but like the other major newspaper that's owned by Bang, The Office is over the hill. And all the TV stuff is up, in the two cities, the town and the city. Like what starts to happen in a place like this when the coverage isn't there? Not that you guys do cover it, but you are one entity. You literally can't cover everything. So if all of the news coverage rests on the Tri-City Voice and then depends on people coming to town from out of town, we're not going to get all the stories. It's not possible. What happens to a place when...
Yeah, I think it is hard if you're not in the town, like experiencing just the day-to-day feeling of it, like how it feels to drive down the streets, like where you tend to go, like what things tend to happen. I guess it would be harder to actually have your finger on the pulse of what's actually important to the people living there.
How was the ownership change for you? Like the Tri-City Voice is now owned by a different entity. Bill and Sharon have retired. You're still there. How was the changeover for you?
It was very positive. I knew that Bill and Sharon wanted to retire. They needed to retire. They've given 20 years of their life to Tri-City Voice. And they were in the office 6 days a week, basically round the year. They were in the office on Monday holidays, finishing the paper when no one else was in the office. It's a lot of work, and they're not super young. So I was just very glad that they found a way to keep the paper going, and I still have a job.
Yeah.
I'm very glad to not be out of a job.
Let me ask you, like the Tri-City Voice runs like on the massive amount of advertising that's in it. I'm assuming that's still roughly true with the new ownership, like that's the business model. I've noticed that like people really like hearing about local news, but they've gotten maybe accustomed to not having to pay for it. And how do you personally like interact with or feel about like that dichotomy of like there is not a lack of desire to hear about what's going on in town, and then subscriptions are down across the country and everyone thinks that you can kind of get that news for free, and then they also complain like why don't we get coverage, that kind of stuff. What has been your interaction with that kind of dichotomy? I'm not really blaming people. It's something we've been allowed to get accustomed to get these free things, but it has come at a cost. What has been your relationship with that?
Yeah, for people not wanting to pay for news, it's kind of, it's hard when people are used to something being free to say, oh no, like this is in the you have to pay for it category now. And I think with news especially, if the sensational, clickbait, unreliable stuff is free and the actual news you have to pay for, then that can also be an issue.
What did you like to do when you lived here? I mean, I know the move is somewhat recent, but what did you like to do in Fremont when you lived here?
Yeah, Fremont's fun. I have to think about what I actually like to do, because I like to go to local restaurants, shopping. I feel like I don't have a lot of free time. I like walking at the lake, actually, because we're at the lake. And yeah, I was close enough that I could just walk over here after work in the evening when it wasn't so hot and just kind of vibe. And I'm trying to think about like the local places. I really liked Aniki's Sushi. There's a lot of cute little restaurants like that.
Cool.
Oh, and I love Mega Mart, actually.
Oh, yeah? What do you like about it?
It's like the closest place to get the good Asian staples. I really like Osaka Market, but it's down in Warm Springs, so it's farther. I didn't go there as much, but if I just needed some tofu, I just needed some kimchi, I needed some nori sheets because I'm making spam musubis or something. I want to get the Korean alcohol. It's so good. I want to get just a big rice bag, or the really thin cut pork belly or pork shoulder. I can actually just go to a local place and get those and cook something. I don't have to go all the way to Mitsuwa in San Jose.
I have recently discovered that Osaka Market is very bikeable from BART. From Warm Springs BART. There's a little bit, you have to be a little bit of a confident rider. There is a stretch, and that intersection of Warm Springs Boulevard and where you're about to get on 680 is kind of scary. But if you just wait it out and wait your turn behind the semi-trucks.
And I also like being really close to Paseo Padre because all the festivals happen there.
Oh, cool.
So I can just walk there. And even to the downtown, it was a bit further from me because I was on Gardino.
Okay.
But it was still nice to not have to worry about parking for those events. Just head out and here's where all the people are. Just gonna hang out.
This will air in a little bit, and we will have already released an episode about the a concert series that was happening on the roof of the Asher, which I think, if my streets are correct, it was nearby where you just said. And apparently it's been canceled because the Asher's under the new management. But some people say that the downtown or the transportation-y part of downtown, the near BART, is kind of dead because it serves a purpose, because it's there to have your house next to the transportation. But you're saying not so much.
I hope not. I really like the efforts that Fremont's making to have a cute little downtown area near the hub, and I think they are going to keep working on it. They're going to actually put housing in one corner of the hub as well. I think that's the Fremont plan, the Fremont development plan, whatever it is. But I think it would be great if we could have more shopping in that area, just more fun stuff to do, and more downtown housing so people can just live there and then walk over to Mega Mart, as I've done a few times, or walk over to the hub, walk over to the Target there, and walk over to BART if they need to. Yeah, living next to BART was great too, because I didn't use it as much as I could have, but I remember I went up to Hayward for the Lit Hop, and that was really fun because it was really close to the BART station, and I could drink and not worry about driving back.
Do you have any hobbies?
Any hobbies? I like writing fiction in my spare time. I don't always have enough time to actually devote to that. I've been playing D&D. My husband is in the same group, so it's kind of fun. We're just hanging out with our friends.
We had an episode not too long ago about the kind of tabletop games community here in Fremont, and we kind of mentioned it on the episode, but I wanted to give credit where credit is due. We were only able to talk to a few of the shop owners, and there are a lot more. It seems like that's a pretty strong community. I know D&D is one of many.
It's very let's put down our phones and use our imaginations and do something that's a little bit strategy based and a little bit creative and performative. And I think people like different sides of it. So if you're very into like, okay, like here's this problem and here's the skill set I have, how am I going to solve it, then like some people like D&D for that reason, and some people like the idea of, ooh, I can play this zany character and have fun with it and like be silly.
What can you recommend to people to do in Fremont?
Like I might recommend hiking, like some unusual spots, like even just around the lake, like just go and walk around the lake. It's really fun. I also like walking along Alameda Creek. Sometimes you can park in neighborhoods, you probably shouldn't, but it's kind of like this weird like secret little spot, and you can kind of go off and look at the different lakes. And yeah, walking along the lakes in Niles too is really fun. Yeah, and I also really like Coyote Hills and Don Edwards. Yeah, mostly hiking stuff. I'd probably recommend like go out and do some hiking and just enjoy like the unusual natural landscape that like we've worked really hard to preserve in Fremont, because it feels like a big city, but then it feels so much less like a big city than when you get like further north, like Oakland and Berkeley. So yeah, I think people should just enjoy it and then find like an unusual little restaurant to go to.
What does Fremont need to improve?
That's a good question. I think people like sometimes like they do feel like it's less safe. You know, we could be better at housing people who need housing. Because sometimes like even around Tri-City Voice, like you see people who are just kind of hanging out outside. They don't quite look okay, and they're probably just chilling, but then it is also a little bit like are they reactive? Like you hope not, but then you're not sure. So I think like there is an issue, and people like don't feel safe for that reason.
Have you ever not felt safe?
I've once in a while, like usually if someone, you know, is just kind of doing their thing, just chilling out, I just like think that that's another person minding their own business. They may not have a place to go to, but they're not like paying attention to me. But once in a while, like there's someone like walking around, like kind of like weaving into people, kind of not, like kind of shouting unpredictably. Like sometimes, like I think once I was in the Rayleighs and like someone was just like weaving around and then like kind of like coming close to me and saying something but not quite saying it to me, and then like weaving back. And sometimes I've gone out walking and like people, guys want to pay me compliments, and I'm like, okay, I don't know you, I'm hoping this is just a compliment and nothing else happens. So like once in a while I feel like I'm not quite sure, like I hope this doesn't escalate. And so far it never has for me. Like no one's actually like started yelling or cussing at me or like actually gotten up in my space. But then it is like a little bit of an undercurrent of nervousness where you're not quite sure what the other person's thinking.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up, but let me ask, as long as it's been around, the Tri-City Voice, and as free as it is, and as many locations as it is plunked down, not everybody knows that it exists. So tell us why people should start reading the Tri-City Voice.
You can learn so much about the people who are living here and the cool stuff that they're doing. And it's just really fun to read about.
And it comes out on which days, how often?
It comes out every Tuesday.
Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Not really. I feel very lucky that I've had not only a job for the past 5 years, but I've been working in my field. And I think that's really difficult if you're not in a STEM field in the Bay Area. So I feel very fortunate that the stars aligned and I started working there when I did.
Well, with that, thank you for, I'll let you get back to your office, which is just over there. We are sitting, for the record, we are sitting at the park at the chess tables. It's nice. There are people here. People should show up. You don't have to work at home when you work from home.
That's true.
Come to the park. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll let you go.
I'm Gary Williams. Andrew Cavett is the editor. Scheduling and pre-interviews by Sarah S. Be sure to subscribe wherever it is that you listen so you don't miss an episode. You can find everything we make, the podcast, and all of our social media links at thefremontpodcast.com. Join us next week on The Fremont Podcast.
This is a Muggins Media podcast.
We like making this podcast. We're glad it exists. If you like the podcast and would like it to exist in the community, please consider supporting the podcast financially. If you can afford $1 a month, then you can support the Fremont Podcast. If you are able to support us making this show, please do. We would like to keep making it. There's a link to buymeacoffee.com in the show notes. It's buymeacoffee.com/the Fremont Podcast /membership.